Hi, Takesha. I'm so glad we have the opportunity to talk today because I know that you're a wealth of knowledge in this area, and I've got some specific questions for you in regard to your role in trade schools and specific to trade schools. We've got some great topics today. Some things that I think trade schools would love to learn. And you being a consultant, you talk to trade school owners all the time and from all walks of life, big and small schools. And that's why I'm excited to have you on today to talk to you about some of these things, these burning questions that many trade schools
Right.
have. I say burning questions because it's funny because I got a phone call coming in, but these workshops are on the fly. Anything can happen, and
Absolutely. So
so
I will hopefully be forgiven if you see a random cat, kind of join the conversation, but I will try to keep them at
love it.
bay. So no worries.
Love it. Well, tell me about yourself, and if you would just give me an introduction. This is Takesha, and if you could give me kind of a broad introduction of who you are and what you do, what you specialize in, where you came from.
My name is Takesha, as you mentioned. I am a recent solopreneur, if you will, in the private school consulting sector, if there is such a thing. And honestly, I've been in working with trade schools and private schools on, the small schools sector to very large corporate schools. And so I've just noticed very specific things that I think each school can benefit from in regards to efficiency processes, enrollment processes, and really try to take a approach of understanding the student as the customer and then the business owner as a business owner. So I've been able to work with enough organizations to understand and appreciate you are wanting to make money. So I do understand that, but help them understand who their customers are and how to get them to the door and service them to the best of their ability. So,
Mm. And I would venture to guess that in your position as a consultant, having that outside third party perspective is really good for them, for trade school owners. In your experience, what would you say why it's so important for trade school owners to understand how the enrollment process works from their perspective and from the student's perspective?
hmm hmm yeah, I think it's important because there is a finesse to it. It's not a sales position. And
Mm.
so instantly you will see trade school owners get the best of the best and they go out and they get very strong salesmen. And that's great. And a little bit of that is needed, but your customers are making emotional decisions. And
Mm.
so they don't need to be convinced or, they don't need the bells and whistles. What they need is someone to understand who they are as a person. So I
Mm.
like to ask my trade school owners and those that are in their organization, who are your customers? And I like to hear the answers. And
Mm.
there's no judgment, there's no right or wrong answers, but it helps me understand where they're at and how they're going to manage their business based on the belief of who their customers are. So it's
Mm.
important for them to understand that, or at least be open to putting the right people in the place that do understand.
Mm. I see what you mean by that. If the It's almost like a consultant role. It reminds me of kind of what we do quite often, in trying to assess what a need is with schools. But with an advisor, they're finding out what is the need and the ultimate destination of that student, of what that student is trying to arrive to. Especially in trades. I mean, trade schools. I've noticed such a great opportunity to not just enroll a student in classes and to teach them, but to actually place them, which
hmm
is incredible opportunity.
And
And
very life changing for that student. And I
mhm,
think trade schools miss out on a valuable opportunity in the back end of employment. Small and large scales, I see schools struggle with employment,
uh,
placing the students, engaging students after they're graduated. And that's another, That's a responsibility, and that all schools have because they're
Hmm.
regulated in some shape or form. And it's hard to pay attention to, really honestly, to be blunt, to revenue that's done. And
Yeah.
that's what I find the struggle with that process on the back end. But it is so very rewarding
Mm.
to celebrate with that student that remember from a year ago or 9 months ago or 3 months ago that was just nervous about starting, and now they're employed. And I
Mm.
think there's a huge opportunity to embrace and celebrate that back end far more as school owners and faculty members as well.
Yeah, and that actually, I think, would be a good future topic that we focus on in the future
Mhm.
when we talk again, because these workshops really are meant to kind of dig into those type of topics, singular topics. Today, our topic really is, focusing on the student cycle and enrollment and things like that in the front end,
Sure.
and but placement is huge because frankly, a lot of grants, federal grants, are provided for schools that place at a high
Very
rate.
well. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
that's there's a lot of opportunity like that. I'll be excited to.
Absolutely. I would love to pick that topic up at a different time. I think we can certainly
Yeah.
have some good conversation around that.
We were talking about there's a term that you use. It's called a student cycle advisor.
Hmm.
Explain what that is and why are they important?
Yeah, I just made it up one day. I don't know where it
Yeah.
came from. I don't even know if it really exists in the world. But and what I noticed just working in with schools is there is a fragmented process in the enrollment cycle.
Mm.
So I've learned that it is important for a student who makes a connection with their admissions or enrollment person to be able to continue with taking care of them or providing them service or continuity of service altogether. So as I started to branch out on my own, I remember those feelings of students almost having a separation anxiety when I had to pass them on to an academic advisor, or then they have a career services advisor, and they have all these different people that are constantly engaging with them, and there's still that same person that was afraid, that was nervous, that had all these barriers to walk through the front door. So working as a consultant, I wanted to try to incorporate all those pieces into one advisor that's
Mm.
really strong enough to support that entire cycle. So you're just not
Mm.
collecting and sharing program information. You are also getting them in class. You're also going to be that person if their grades drop below average. You're going to engage with them and remind them of their why and bring
Mm.
them back. If it's a new person, they may not even respond. The engagement is different, but it's a sense of accountability that they have with someone that they trust from the beginning. So my
Mm.
role as a consultant is to work with the schools and give them and train them with and lead them essentially with a student psycho advisor that can be strong enough to review the program, get them enrolled, get all the documentation, support that student in class, keep them on track, and then support them on the back end with employment and externships and graduation and all of that, and hand them off to conquer the world. So that's my vision for definitely smaller trade schools, but I can see it working as well in a larger corporate entity as well. So
Mm.
eventually I'm hoping to be able to pitch that to enough people to understand that there is something to say about continuity of service on an emotional behavioral level.
That's awesome. You know what it kind of reminds me of when it popped in my mind as you were explaining the role. I was thinking guide. You go on an adventure trail that you've never been before. You
Hmm.
need a guide, right?
Right.
And
Right.
even in school, in high school, I had a guidance counselor, and what a great name for that, because it's
Right.
I needed counsel, and I needed someone to guide me. So this is much the same. And we
Sure.
were talking about emotional intelligence when it comes to of the student advisor itself. So I think I know what you're talking about now when you say
Mhm.
uh, 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 the counselor, so to speak, the psycho advisor,
Yes.
having a high emotional intelligence to be able to advise and guide them along the way. Speak of that a little bit in regard to emotional intelligence, if you would.
Yeah. So I found that the students that I talk to as an enrollment advisor, they it's in a very emotional decision for them to move forward. They are nervous. They have life, right? As we all do. They have children and responsibilities. So it's not, it's an emotional decision. So to be able to recognize where that student, your customer, is at in their lifestyle and be able to adapt to understanding that and have enough empathy to give them the resources to think about how it is possible for
Uh,
you to go back to school and what
mhm,
you can do or how you can set a goal to move towards that. And it's not easy. It is a lot of work. You are coaching and guiding for sometimes months before that student is ready to commit to that. So you don't need a sales representative there. You don't
mhm,
need someone that can say we cost this much, we take this long, and we give you what you need to get you out the door. We That's not this type of role, and especially not in
mhm.
a smaller trade school.
So it's not
When
transactional, it's more relational,
it's
right?
very much so relational, and you
Yeah.
have to be able to pick up on those, you know, fears that you're hearing. You can't just kind of wait for the break in the conversation to say, hey, it's 37:39. You can't just jump in there, and you
Hmm.
have to really be able to commit to understanding that person. And that's a big key. That's where I found my success. Those are where I found the peers that I work with have success when they were able to stop and listen to that student and understand that student, and how to help them work through those. And it's not a counsel. You're not a psychologist. You're not a therapist, but you should be able to understand their fears. And being
Hmm.
able to do that allows you to continue to remind them of how they're progressing as they're in school. You can bring them back to the beginning and the whys and the fears, and remind them of where they were and where they're at and how far they have to go. But it takes a person that's highly emotional intelligent to be able to work through that, because it is draining, and that's the honest truth. You are
Hmm.
getting invested far more than if you were just selling a product.
Yeah. I'm glad you are talking about that because it's funny because a lot of people may not know where our name Peak Enrollment came from, but Eric, our co-founder, he's a mountain climber,
Mm.
so it makes sense. Peak, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that was kind of in his mind. But if you think about it, when you're talking about a guide, someone who has emotional intelligence is someone who has experience, who's been there, done that. And to keep someone focused on their goal, which in their life is the peak. They're trying
Hmm.
to reach the peak in their life, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so the school is trying to keep the student, right, from a relational standpoint, not
Yes.
transactional,
Right.
but helping that guide that student up that mountain, up that trail, so to speak,
Hmm.
where they're gonna trip, they're gonna twist their ankle, they're
Hmm.
those things,
Don't
the
forget to
troubles,
drink water. They're going to do all
frustrations,
of those things.
which means bad grades or whatever,
Hmm.
to guide
Hmm.
that student. To kind of direct us on the topic of admissions, like from the beginning when a school gets started. I know a lot of trade schools start out by thinking, build it and they will come.
Yes, yes.
But as we all know, we soon find out that it takes a lot of work to fill classes, right?
Sure, sure.
What would you say the key components are that contribute to filling those classes, and what role does effective marketing play in that?
Yeah, I think the that misconception is there. I think it's a little bit of just the passion that they have for the content that they're teaching. That they feel
Hmm.
like there's a place for this. Everyone wants to do, and everyone should jump on this because I'm passionate, and that is a great place to be. It's definitely the first step. But in terms of getting your enrollments and getting those students to come to that building, you have to understand there's a reason why there's terms like a pipeline, right? Because
Right.
there is a process to getting that student there. There's no
Hmm.
special you can promote. There's no buy one, get one free that's enticing for this industry. It is really the compassion that you're able to continue to have, to continue to call, continue to reach out, continue to listen, take those notes. I literally, my notes look very strange when I'm doing admissions. I put things in there, two dogs, has four cats, So when I talk to them 3 months, that I know that I can bring those things up and re-engage with them. But there's a reason why there's a pipeline because it is not that simple. There are quite a few emotional barriers and there are quite a few financial barriers
Mm.
that all of those students have to deal with. So the fact that they clicked on a button or made a phone call, you have to understand they're coming with those type of barriers and they're coming to our trade schools because they see an opportunity to be able to get through the door that they may not have at a junior college or university level. So we have a unique opportunity, but we also have a set of students that come with
Mhm.
barriers that you have to be able to be patient and work through them and understand that these are people that need to maybe find funding. They need to make arrangements with daycare. So it's not that they don't want to come and you didn't build it well enough or your marketing isn't great. I see those changes happen very quickly in trade schools because they feel it's not working. Well, you have to give it time. There's no other way around it. You open up a school the month of October, you may have a handful of students in January. So you are constantly needing those strong advisors that can engage with those students and call them once a month if they're unsure. Call them next week if they're unsure. And you just become, their friend until they're like, you know what, thank you for being there. But it is a pipeline
Yeah.
for a reason. It's not a bucket, you know.
Right.
So it's gonna go through there, and it's gonna take its time. And there's, I would say always at least 90 days, you're gonna see a student come close to making a decision.
Yeah.
Sometimes I really get discouraged if a student is too eager to start because they
Mm.
have not thought through the barriers. So there's a
Yeah.
very sweet spot in making sure a student understands because if you are able to get them to come, you have to be prepared to set those expectations for them to continue. So
Mhm.
understanding it's a pipeline. You will
Yeah.
work these leads, they're there. You know that person had an interest. So it's a matter of working through those pipelines, not buckets
Mhm.
that are going to appear. So, starting a school, make sure you're financially prepared to maybe not have a strong first year. You know,
Mhm.
hence now we want to have a strong 9 months, maybe a strong six, but realistically go into it knowing that you should be able to financially support this trade school for at least a year and put the right pieces in place to support that when it does come
Mm.
because it will come. It will come. It
Yeah.
definitely will.
Especially with
But you can't jump
consistency.
too soon and you can't throw a lot of money at it and hope the fanciest of the fanciest coffee in the lobby is going to
Yeah.
get them to sign up. That's just not how that works.
Right. And I've seen a lot of schools throw a lot of money to things. I was in conversation with one school that spent a lot of money on radio
Mm,
last year, and I asked the question: Are 18 to 26-year-olds listening to the radio, or are they on Spotify or
right,
Apple Tunes or things like that? And they
hmm,
went, "Oh, I didn't even think about that."
right,
And
right,
because that person was in their 50s
hmm,
and they listen to the radio still, and
right,
they don't know that world. And on that subject, actually,
hmm,
we are aware that a lot of trade schools are not following up with their student leads effectively. First of all,
mm,
number one, they often will try to reach potential students in the way that they're not listening. They also
right,
have expectations that are unrealistic, like expecting someone to call them. right
Mhm.
away just because they have their phone number on their website,
Right.
or a contact form. Just
Mhm.
give me
Mhm.
all your information and then we'll call you. Well, they don't, especially that age group, the younger age group, they don't want
Sure.
anybody calling them,
Mm-mm.
and
Mm-mm.
so they're not going to give up their information. So, what would you say to schools that haven't been following up with the student leads they actually do get? Maybe they were in a process of being able to nurture them through their
Sure.
website and convert them, attract the
Mhm.
right leads, and do that type of stuff, like what we do with schools. But what should a typical student lead follow up process look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely want to just briefly say I appreciate the features that have been placed in the Peak Suite platform that does allow schools that are small and don't have a lot of resources to be able to get some of that initial engagement in the beginning, because it is the beginning initial engagement.
Yeah.
Um, if you think of a typical student, they're on a social media platform. They're clicking. They're just clicking through, right? And so you may be one of many schools that they're looking into with many genres that are broad, because it's
Hmm.
so easy to get access to information. But if you don't engage with that lead on both ends, so on the business end, just know that all those deals, all those opportunities are dollar signs. So that email costs you whatever it costs you. So if you're looking at it from a business owner, please look at them at dollar signs if that's going to make you engage from that
Hmm.
standpoint and take it seriously enough. Those lovely emails are dollar signs. From an
Yeah.
advisor standpoint, I encourage them to reach out to them at least within 15 minutes, excuse me, to an hour of getting that notification.
Mm.
Preferably text. And obviously, with some of the features that we work with in Peak Suite, we some of that initial engagement is already done. So they already feel very engaged in that. But there is a human element to all of it. So please, schools that are relying on the phone numbers and the Google Forms to kind of complete the enrollment process, it's not a car. We enjoy that process when we're buying a car because we don't have people in our face. But as a student, you need some human engagement at some point. So if you are not utilizing that 15-minute to 1 hour within business hours to engage with that student, you're missing out on a huge opportunity, because that other ad that they clicked on in regards to the school down the street did call them, did
Mm.
call, and they are now interested because someone paid enough attention. Even with our younger population, there is going to be a time where they're going to want to engage,
Yeah.
but they are comfortable with doing their initial talking via text. But they will want to hear, who are you? Who am I talking to? They will then come to a point in that process. So I encourage business owners at the very least, when they open up their school, that is your bread and butter, and you have to work that pipeline. And if you're relying on all your Google Forms and some of those things that help you keep your you know employment costs down, because you don't have to have people doing all these things, but you
Hmm.
can 100% rely on those um, opportunities to go through a workflow and land in your classroom. So please take it seriously and pay attention to those as dollar signs, because you're paying for them. No matter where those leads or deals or opportunities come from, there is a revenue, there's an expense tied to it. And your advisor should take it just as importantly, that they need to do some form of initial engagement to stand out outside of any automated emails that we all get numb to.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because quite often, someone may look at systems like what we provide or other marketing companies
Mhm,
provide to replace the human element.
mhm.
But actually, we create them to augment the human element, to make that human process even better than it could be,
Sure.
because the human needs guided through the process. And if they have automated augmentation there to support that effort, especially when the students are searching at 2 o'clock in the morning. No one's calling.
Right,
I
right.
guarantee you that. No one's staying up that late.
There's not an advisor in the world that's superb that's going to reach out at
Plus,
2
it would be weird, right?
Very much so, very much
The
so.
information. Oh my gosh, someone called me. That's weird.
At 2 o'clock, right?
So, what do you think the difference is? And we're close to closing up our discussion today,
Sure.
but what would you say the main differences you've seen between schools that actually thrive and schools that struggle in regard to what we've been talking about?
The schools that thrive are those that understand that there is going to be a human element in the enrollment process.
Hmm.
Those are, I tell all the schools we have no control of a person or a student being able to enroll or wanting to enroll, but we do have control over the engagement that we offer to them. And whether they decide to move forward or not, you've given them that opportunity. So, schools that understand that there is a process to this, that you are always working 3 months out. So if
Hmm.
you're not working 3 months out to fill up those sessions, you're wasting your time. It can't be okay. A session is over. Let's try to fill this, or we're two
Hmm.
weeks out, or we're 30 days out. You are always working two sessions at a time,
Hmm.
right? So you should
Yeah.
always be forward thinking in your enrollment and guiding your conversations to such. And so having a realistic expectation of what the process takes. The automated system is great. It does a lot of legwork for an advisor, and it is valuable for small trade schools. This is a human part of the element you can save time on and let them focus on other things and working outside pipelines and further pipelines. So the successful schools are ones that are able to work their opportunities. And when I say work a deal or opportunity, I mean constantly engaging, following up, making a text message. If they said no a month ago, still follow up with them 30 days from there. How are
Hmm.
things going? Did you change your mind? We've got this going on. We have a class starting in 2 months. What would you think about starting enrollment for that? It's 2 months out. Your kids are in summer, so you always have to be reminding them how this very moment is a perfect time. And you cannot 100% rely on automations.
Yep.
It's just not possible to do so, but it is a valuable resource to get that initial engagement out and started with there. So the most successful
Mhm.
schools are ones that understand the importance of a human element in the enrollment process and
Yeah.
not rely on automations 100%.
That's good. That's awesome, and I'm glad you clarify that. Hearing somebody else say that instead of us, because yeah, we're great at automation, but we are
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
much a proponent of that human relational element.
And
And
I come from an old school, right? So
yeah,
I it gives me a tad bit of an anxiety with an automation. I'm like,
yeah,
what are they saying? I want to say it. So to
right,
able to marry what I feel and believe from just working in the past and incorporating kind of the new world order, if you
yeah,
will, is it's an experience that I think can work well. So I feel like I can help them understand and breathe a
mhm,
little sigh of relief that there's a part of that that can be taken care of with automations, but it goes to serve to have a live person to guide them through that process.
yeah. That was actually the motivation behind us starting a new component of our program that it augments automation, but it's literally a human on the backside of it communicating with a student for schools. Where instead of them having to hire somebody directly,
Right,
they've got
right.
support on
Because
our
most
end.
small schools can't have 4 or 5 advisors to
They
catch
can.
those, to stay open business hours. So the marrying of the two is awesome, but I think a realistic expectation that you will need a
Hmm.
advisor.
Yeah.
You will need that person. There's no way around it, and it can't be your instructor who's also your tour guide, who's also your, there's definitely
Right.
a dedication to that role, and hopefully I'll be able to touch as many schools so they can still stay functioning as a business and stay true to what their vision and passion is. And so I just hopefully be able to assist them in marrying those two ideas and getting more success and, self pleasure from starting a trade school because it did start with a vision and a passion. And I
Yes.
see lots of school owners lose that at
Yep.
the end, by at the end of the first year. They don't want to do it. They don't want to be in that industry, and it's
Um,
a passion for them. So I think we can figure out a process for them to
yep.
continue that.
You are so right. I've met so many trade school owners whose lives were changed because they went through trade school education.
Mhm.
Something they thought they weren't they did not want to go the path of higher education for whatever reason. Could have been
Sure.
expense, could have been ability, or terrible SAT scores like myself,
Right.
or whatever,
Mhm.
but they had such a heart to help others go the same path that they did. And I think in our society nowadays, there's been a pivot finally towards trade school education because we need it so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's the just the placement, and that's going to be a future talk of ours. Just being able to place someone in a job because it's connected to the college they go to is a huge component, and the
Mhm.
partnerships that happen between businesses and trade schools, I
Sure.
think, wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
So
And
I
I,
would.
yeah, I do. I agree with that 100%.
So I'm just excited that you are in a position to be able to help, especially those trade school owners who have a heart and a passion for what they're doing. That's their why. It's almost like the psycho advisor,
Yes.
or the guidance counselor coming in
Mhm.
to make sure that they do not forget their why
Right.
in the midst of them creating a business such as a trade school,
Mhm.
and to be able to be guided, and they need a guide as well. So that is you. That's
Yes.
what your role
Yes.
is their guide. So with that note, this is my time to ask you,
Yeah.
how can someone actually reach out to you if they need that third party advice,
Mhm.
counsel, and consultation to know what to do next to be able to stay on track of what they
Yeah.
initially started with?
Absolutely. I do have a website they can go to. I am on it. So it's privateschoolconsult.com. And so they can reach out to me. I'm sure as the platform grows, I'll have some contact information there for you as well. My email address is Takesha at privateschoolconsult.com, so they can certainly shoot me an email. And I definitely am here to get them back to why they started, which is their passion. So my slogan is, it's consulting with your vision in mind.
Ah,
I am able to help you stay where you want it to stay and not feel overwhelmed. So I look forward to being able to connect with as many schools and help them get back to where their trade school is rewarding to them, not only financially but spiritually as well too.
that's awesome, and thank you so much, because you and I were talking before we started this call about our common vision, and that is a common vision along with schools
Hmm.
to be able to educate well and to do what they're gifted at,
Hmm.
and to ultimately the goal, which is a common goal for you, me, and peak enrollment, and schools alone, is to change more lives.
Yes.
And we put
Yes.
people in seats and fill those seats. We change more lives and the trajectory of those students' lives and their family. That is our common goal. And
In a short amount of time in most cases, and that is
it,
a powerful
absolutely.
place to be in. A lot of it is time. So if I can get in a better place financially and emotionally and with my family in 3 months,
Ah,
we have a huge opportunity as a trade school to figure out what our secret sauce in the trade school industry is, and
yes,
spread that word and get people back. Because I think a lot of us are, in some form, way, shape, that we are a product of a trade school, whether we know someone or went through one and learned graphic design or learned things that are not traditional in those colleges. So we have a unique opportunity to be able to be successful and spread the word and get people back out there with a career.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, Takesha, I appreciate your time. This has been
Thank
fun,
you.
and
Absolutely.
I look forward to the next topics that are up and coming,
Yes.
Definitely an exciting time to be able to talk about these subjects,
I
especially for
agree.
trade school owners. Yeah.
I
So I appreciate
agree.
you.
I agree. So nothing like talking private school with something with someone that enjoys talking the same talk. So
That's right.
anytime, and feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have.
Great. Thank you so much. Take
Thank
care.
you. Have a good day.